Assalomu alaykum hurmatli mehmonlar, aql markazlari vakillari, fuqarolik jamiyati institutlari, ommaviy axborot vakillari va qadrli ishtirokchilar. Bugungi O'zbekistonda aql markazlari faoliyatining istiqbollari mavzusida davra suhbatimizga xush kelibsiz. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished representatives of various organizations, think tanks, civil society, academia, media, and all esteemed guests. Good afternoon and welcome to today's roundtable discussion on the prospects for think tanks in Uzbekistan. It's an honor to gather here with a diverse group of professionals, experts, whose shared commitment to evidence-based policy making, strategic research, and public sector development shapes the intellectual landscape of our country. Dunyo amaliyotida aql markazlari davlat va jamiyat taraqqiyotining intellektual tayanch sifatida hal qiluvchi o'rin egallaydi. Ular yordamida tahliliy tadqiqotlar, strategik takliflar, milliy va mintaqaviy siyosatni takomillashtirish bo'yicha asosiy yondashuvlar ishlab chiqiladi. Indeed, their ability to conduct independent research, generate policy recommendations, and facilitate dialogue among government, civil society, and academia makes them essential components of a modern governance system. This roundtable aims to explore how Uzbek think tanks can further enhance their influence, deepen regional cooperation, and contribute meaningfully to the development of our society. Throughout today's session, we will hear our wonderful leading experts and professionals from local and international research institutions from Uzbekistan, South Caucasus, Azerbaijan, and other countries. Their insights will help us identify opportunities, understand institutional challenges, and envision pathways for strengthening the role of analytical centers in our country's policy ecosystem. Today, we will look forward to facilitating a productive, meaningful exchange of ideas and ensuring that every voice contributes to this collective dialogue. During the session, we will be exploring the evolution of policy research ecosystem, lessons from the South Caucasus, Azerbaijan, the role of analytical centers in democratic governance, the strategic importance of long-term legal policy, the demand for independent think tank services, and the development of young researchers and research capacity in Uzbekistan. After the presentation, we will jointly reflect on the ideas discussed and open the floor for a Q&A session. Shunday qilib, bugungi davra suhbatini rasman ochish uchun Progressiv islohotlar markazi rahbari Aslonov Mirshohid Farhodovichni taklif etaman. Marhamat.
All right, thank you very much. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We decided to conduct this session in English language, even though majority are from Uzbekistan, because we believe that we need to advocate English discourse, especially when it comes to think tanks, because lots of our activities are tightly connected to the world, connected to our partners. So we believe that if we want to develop further, if we want to advocate, and if we want to instill that kind of culture of rigorous research, we need to discuss and use English as a medium more often. So I'm not sure if we can turn on the presentation. Iltimos, bering nimalardan kim agar tushunmasa tadbirimiz ingliz tilida bo'ladi. Mana quloqliklar bor, bemalol olaveringlar, tarjima bor. Okay. So, thank you very much for coming in these early winter days to discuss the future of think tanks in Uzbekistan. Uzbekistan, as we all know, is going through rigorous reforms in all sectors. It's the most transformative reform period in the history of Uzbekistan, which increasingly demands the need and requirement for institutions that think strategically, that think long-term. For me, this is more than just an abstract idea. Throughout my career, spanning over 20 years, I was engaged in the process of strategic thinking and analysis, was engaged and involved in development of different strategies, concepts, doctrines, and different regulations. But after 2016, when Uzbekistan began opening up to the world and embracing new reforms, this work became increasingly meaningful. Many of the ideas and strategies we have dreamt of for years became possible to develop, to present, and to implement. It was a period of honeymoon, you can say, when the country was redefining itself and the analytical work finally had the space to influence and to make a real change and impact. Even when I worked inside the government, I was always of the idea that there should be some extra activity outside of the government, because the government mostly prioritizes short-term goals. There are so many things to do, so many tasks, and you are always burned with different routine. That's why I believe that there should be institutions that really has that kind of independent structure where you also can implement whatever your values or whatever your calling is. This belief is what pushed me to create the Center for Progressive Reforms. I want a place where I could work according to my values, where we could do serious research freely, and where our work serves the public, not short-term interests. And this is exactly why think tanks matter in Uzbekistan today. Our economy is becoming more complex. Our regional role is growing, and the public expects better information and better policies. To move forward confidently, the country needs institutions that can think strategically, independently, with a long-term vision. So, before we talk about the future, I want to make something clear. What is think tank and what is not? In Uzbekistan, think tank is quite a new idea. Many people confuse think tanks with universities, with NGOs, with consultancies. But a think tank is a little bit different. It sits in the middle of analysis, policy, communication, and public service. A think tank's main mission is very simple: to help society think better by generating ideas, bringing evidence to decision makers, and turning complex issues into clear practical solutions. One common understanding is that a think tank is just a group of analysts writing different kinds of reports. But research alone doesn't change anything. The real impact comes when you work with different ministries, members of parliament, civil society, private sector, international partners, and journalists, media overall. From our experience at CPR, we learned very quickly. Writing a strong paper is only half the job. You need to sell it. You need to promote so that people understand and believe in what you're proposing, so that it's used in decision-making, either in the government or in any other organization. Another misconception is that think tanks should only stay on the sidelines, only watching, commenting, or criticizing. But around the world, this is no longer the case. The best modern think tanks in Europe, in US, Africa, East Asia, you name it, help design policies, advise on implementation, and support governments in building long-term strategies. They act as bridges between the academic knowledge and the political decisions, between what society needs and what institutions can deliver. And with Uzbekistan's fast pace of reforms, we need exactly this kind of institution. And finally, there's a question of independence. Many people think that independence means opposition. But in think tank world, independence means something else. It means being guided by evidence, not by political cycles, but by long-term national interests, not by short-term pressures. independence is not a political position, it's a professional method. And for a country like ours, where institutions are still growing, this method is essential. It helps keep community preserved institutional memory and make sure policies are based on facts and not personalities. Okay. So let's talk about global trends in think tanks ecosystem. To understand where Uzbekistan's think tank sector is going, we should first look at what's happening around the world. Everywhere, think tanks are changing because of new technology. I believe it's not just think tanks, but every institution nowadays is changing because of new technologies. And of course, there is very popular nowadays AI, ChatGPT, that I believe many students sitting here are using very much actively. So there is fast politics, there is growing need for quick evidence-based advice. And these global trends will also influence how our own institution develop in the coming years. One big challenge is the shift from a long academic reports to real-time policy support. Today, government must react quickly to crisis, misinformation, climate risks, and geopolitical shocks. Because of this, leading think tanks in the US, Europe, anywhere in the world nowadays have rapid response teams, digital monitors, or different kind of dashboards, information dashboards. The expectation is no longer explain the world in 50 pages. Nowadays, everyone wants to learn and want from think tanks to provide solutions just in one page or maybe a few pages, to show solutions in different kind of pictures. We feel the same at CPR. The ministries, the development partners increasingly ask for insights that are fast, short, and directly useful for decisions. Another global trend of the rise of think tanks is that they are nowadays merging with media institutions. Think tanks like Brookings, Chatham House, or even CPR now produce podcasts, short videos, graphics, and simple explainers. Their aim is to inform the public, not only experts. This is crucial today, when disinformation spreads quickly and societies are polarized. Modern think tanks must communicate clearly and simply complex issues without losing the meaning. Another third important trend is growing role of think tanks in quiet diplomacy and regional cooperation. For example, CPR this year only have engaged in over a dozen different discussions, negotiations, track to diplomacies. This year, for example, in May, we conducted for the first time the Termes dialogue. It was on connectivity between Central and South Asia. So this was conducted in Termes city, which borders on Afghanistan. And it was for the first time where the people from different sectors, from the government, from academia, think tanks, even businesses, they came together and discussed what could be done actually to improve cooperation between Central and South Asia, and how we can involve in all of this Afghanistan, because it's still somehow sidelined from all the processes. And we believe that Afghanistan should be a part of our cooperation, region-to-region cooperation. And of course, there was another one just last month. There was a conference in Fergana. We called it Fergana Peace Valley, and CPR is proud that it was part of that new project where we, for the first time, gathered the government, businesses, civil society, youth, students from 3 countries sharing Fergana Valley, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan. I believe it was a success because after that there was a consultancy meeting between the presidents of Central Asian states, and our presidents also voiced that this idea, this initiative should continue and should be conducted on annual basis. So this is what think tanks in Uzbekistan, this is what CPR is also engaged with. And finally, of course, the world is moving towards more specialized expertise. The climate strategy, we know how the climate nowadays is very much important topic in Uzbekistan. I believe you came today, but yesterday, Uzbekistan, the Tashkent city, saw one of the worst climate repercussions of human activities, I would say. because the Tashkent city was on the top of the most polluted cities in the world. So the analysis that checks the quality of air, there is a website, US AQI, so it showed Tashkent on top, and the air was even hazardous. So there was some kind of influence that happened yesterday, but I believe it's a continuous thing where I believe think tanks also should play a crucial role in providing different solutions. These global changes show us very clearly that the future of think tanks look like more dynamic, more communicative, more specialized, and more involved in real policies. So, Uzbekistan today is going through one of the fastest and widest reform process in our region. Because of this, the country now clearly needs institutions that can think strategically. Our ministries and agencies are dealing with many big tasks at the same time: economic modernization, the energy transition, the regional diplomacy, governance reforms, climate challenges, and the digital agenda. Naturally, this creates a strong demand for outside analytical support. In reality, this means that think tanks are no longer optional. Policymakers often need quick assessments, scenarios, international comparisons, and the communication strategies. At CPR, we saw this ourselves. Our work on political reforms, climate strategies, and energy sector, regional cooperation, and the public communication show that Uzbek institutions gain a lot when they work very closely with think tanks like CPR. And finally, Uzbekistan's growing international engagement, deeper cooperation within Central Asia and with our international partners. It's not just about the language, actually. It's about the standards and the knowledge that that can speak directly and understand each other. This is very important when Uzbekistan is trying to merge into international community and provide different solutions, not only for itself, but for the region, for the global world as well. So, lessons learned from the building CPR. My own path to founding CPR was shaped by many years in the policy planning division, in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, in the presidential administration. Wherever I served, the analysis and strategic thinking became the core of my work. But after 2016, when Uzbekistan opened a new chapter of these reforms, those years were especially inspiring. For the first time, it became possible to turn ideas into real strategies in foreign policy, security, information, and sectoral development. That period convinced me that the good analysis is not a luxury, it's the foundation of coherent statecraft. But even during those productive years, one thought continued to grow. Uzbekistan needed institutions outside of the government that could think long-term, preserve institutional memory, and bring independent judgment into policy making. Ministries and staff change, priorities shift, administrative routines tend to consume strategic energy. A strong think tank ecosystem that can help ensure continuity and keep national interests above political cycles was necessary. This is why I decided to launch CPR, even though at the beginning not many people understood what I was trying to develop. Some people thought it was a university, some people thought it's some kind of consultancy or a kind of philanthropy NGO. But because this is exactly the new thing for Uzbekistan. But I believe I would like to inspire the young people here, especially students, to think about an option to working for a think tanks, because I believe this is the best way actually to learn something new, to communicate whatever you want to do, or maybe to find solutions to the problems and impact actually the changes going on in Uzbekistan. Of course, there are challenges. There are lots of challenges. For example, one of the biggest challenges is ensuring sustainable funding. I believe I look at it as a kind of business project, because if you look into the business, there are I don't know if you have heard about the Blue Ocean strategy. I'm not sure if teachers nowadays talk about this, but it's like you need to create actually a market and reap all the benefits as a pioneer of different ideas, or it can be sectors even in different areas actually. So we are now entering a kind of blue ocean where there is not much competition because it's a new field. There are only governmental think tanks, but the independent think tanks are very few. For example, Mr. Talipov has his own think tank, but such kind of think tanks are just so few that it's difficult actually to say that there is a kind of ecosystem in Uzbekistan. But still, there are so many opportunities actually to work. As I said, we work not only with the governments, but we work closely with businesses, because businesses also have realized that they need different solutions. They need different ideas actually to develop further in Uzbekistan, to promote the different, for example, legislation that could play a kind of crucial role in developing different sectors. It can be IT, it can be banking sector, it can be different production, and so on and so forth. But as I said, in the initial stage, the funding is very much crucial, and when it comes to the think tanks, it's always important to keep that kind of pipeline of different projects, because there's a high chance that there will be a gap, and when there is a gap, you may lose the best and brightest talents that you have. And of course, there is competition for talent. Nowadays, the government is paying actually very good money for government public servants in Uzbekistan. So it's difficult to compete actually with the government. And of course, there are businesses, there are transnational companies. It's also, you need to compete with them as well for brightest talents. But I believe every sector has their own niche and fans that can really work and want to work in those kind of sectors. Limited data access. It's a huge challenge for Uzbekistan. Nowadays, we are working with different international financial institutions. It can be a World Bank, EBRD, ADB, doesn't matter. They have so many projects in Uzbekistan for research, but there are not many companies actually willing to bid those different biddings, participate in different tenders actually, because it's very difficult to find data. It can be anything. It can be like underground sewage in Surkhandarya region actually, but if you look deeper into it, you won't be able to find anything. So you need to do that kind of micro data mining, we call it. So it's a quite challenge. You can say there are so many challenges in every sector that you need to sometimes start from the scratch, the collection of the data. And of course, there is also need for evidence-based policy culture, that kind of, because not everyone believes in think tanks. Not every company, ministries, agencies believe that they need think tanks because they believe that they are the best in the sector, they know the best, they know everything, and they don't need any external either validation or knowledge. So this is the thing that we are trying to cope with, and of course, even though it's challenging, but it's really rewarding when you provide different solutions and the ministries, agencies, they say, aha, this is exactly what we needed. We couldn't find answers for so many years. So this is the thing that we always enjoy in the end of our researches. So when it comes to opportunities, there are so many opportunities for think tanks in Uzbekistan. Well, you know, the reforms are going on in every sector. And they're sometimes seen as chaotic because so many things going on in every field, and it's difficult actually to see, first of all, what's going on, and also it's difficult for different agencies, governments, to streamline their efforts to change, because if you start reforms in one sector, it affects the other sectors as well. And of course, there is a huge need for think tanks for this. And of course, we are nowadays working with our international partners, and the international partners, when it comes to Uzbekistan, they need what? They need evidence, they need research, they need projects. For example, nowadays, just recently, the leadership of Uzbekistan went to the United States and signed agreements worth over $100 billion. And of course, all those companies willing to work with Uzbekistan, they will need some kind of hard data, information. They want to be sure that their investment in Uzbekistan will be secure. So they want to know the legislation, overall environment in Uzbekistan, where they will get this information from. They need some kind of independent sources. So this is where actually think tanks can be very much instrumental in actually promoting that kind of understanding and promoting that kind of cooperation with international partners. And of course, the biggest source of optimism are actually the youth, actually. I believe nowadays you're learning a lot, you have lots of knowledge, you are eager actually to work, to gain knowledge and to contribute to impact actually to the development of Uzbekistan, development of the region, development of international cooperation. We specifically ask people, students from the University of World Economy Diplomacy, Webster University, and other universities that deal with international partners to come to attend this event so that we hope that you'll be inspired actually to think about working in think tanks, not only, I'm not talking about CPR only, there are so many think tanks nowadays in development actually. There is the Institute for Prospective the Advanced International Studies, right? Within the University of World Economy and Diplomacy, it's also very good. So, Bilim Karvani is a great place to work with. Mr. Talipov actually is excellent expert, our mentor, actually guru of international relations, and any diplomat you can say in Uzbekistan. So, thank you very much. I hope I wasn't too boring, but I just want to inspire you all and share my own opinion, my own experience and journey actually of establishing think tank in Uzbekistan and share with my ideas how actually bright is the future of think tanks in Uzbekistan. Thank you very much.
Thank you once again, Mr. Aslanov, for setting a thoughtful foundation for today's dialogue. So now we will proceed our presentation with the political analyst at the Center for Progressive Reforms, with Mr. Otabek Akramov. Please welcome.
First of all, thank you so much for inviting me to talk here, to participate in this beautiful event. I want to thank Mashakh Deka for introducing and explaining the world of think tanks for the audience. My speech is both for the audience and for students, because I'm going to talk about some limitations based on my own experience. So when we talk about the future of think tanks, we usually discuss funding, institutional status, or access to decision makers. All of that matters, we all understand that. But I want to focus on something more basic and more uncomfortable, in the sense how we actually think when we do analysis. It's a very fundamental issue, especially in policy analysis. In my experience, a large shape of policy analysis in our context, especially political analysis, rests not on methods, but on the overall feelings of the analyst. We confidently write that society supports the reforms. People are tired of conflicts. Youth are more patriotic, often without any systematic evidence behind these claims. They are based on impressions, a few conversations, maybe one trip to the region. And then we present them as facts. This is not unique to Uzbekistan. In his classical work, Psychology of Intelligence Analysis, Richard Hoyers shows that the human mind is not built for objective analysis. It's built for quick and intuitive judgments. We simplify complex reality. We fit new information into what we already believe in. We search for confirming evidence. We are overconfident in our conclusions. Even professional intelligence officers fall into these traps. Hoyer's main message is clear. Our psychology has built-in limitations. Vivid anecdotes feel more convincing than dry numbers. We generalize from very small, unrepresentative samples. We assume others think like we do. None of this is intentional manipulation. It's simply how our brains work. Now put this together with our environment. An analyst in a think tank under time pressure expected to be constructive, with limited access to data and little formal training in methods. The analyst will naturally rely on intuition, habit, and personal experience. The problem is not that the analyst is lazy or incompetent. The problem is that we are asking individual intuition to do a job that by its nature requires a structural analysis and methods. So when we look honestly at much of our analysis today, we see what Hoyer warned against: confident conclusions sitting on a very weak methodological foundation with almost no reflection on how we got there. And then these products are sent up to very high-level decision makers. At this point, the usual objection appears. Okay, we are not academics. We are not scholars. We work in policy. We have days, not years, as in PhD, for example. You have 3 years to design well-sustained research, do the field work, and etc. While in policy analysis, you're always constrained with time. And I agree about this time pressure. Policy analysis is not PhD, right? Decisions cannot wait for perfect research designs. This is why I'm not saying think tanks should become universities. Let heavy theoretical work, long field work, complex modeling be done by scholars. This is their role. But even under time pressure, we cannot reduce policy analysis to what I feel today. You cannot give suggestions to the president or whatever higher authority based on your feelings. There should be a middle ground between a 2-year research project and one-page intuition. So one-page intuition is sometimes a reality of today's think tank world. To occupy the middle ground, we need at least 3 minimal elements. First, there must be a question, clear question. We forget about this because science and policy should rely on concrete questions that needs to be addressed. Instead of starting from a speech and rephrasing it, we should start from a puzzle. Why is this reform supported by some groups and resisted by others? Why does one region lag behind? Under what conditions could this policy backfire? A clear question immediately disciplines our thinking. It helps us separate what is relevant from what is decorative. Second, there must be at least a basic method that helps us resist our own biases. This doesn't have to be complex. It could mean a small but structured set of interviews with the same core questions rather than random conversations, a short, carefully designed survey instead of a Telegram poll of followers, or even a simple checklist we apply every time we draft a brief. What is my evidence? What alternative explanations exist? What am I assuming without proof? These are modest tools, but they already protect us from worse cognitive traps that Hoyers explains. Third, there must be a minimal transparency. Somewhere in note or brief, it should be clear what data we used, how we obtained it, and what limitations it has. Without that, nobody, no policymakers, not other experts can distinguish between evidence and mood. And if we cannot distinguish that, we cannot improve our work. So my call is not busy policy analysts become theorists. My call is busy policy analysts. Give yourself simple methods that help you think against your own psychology. Deep theory can belong to academia, but basic structure must belong to all of us who claim to do analysis. If we agree that there is a problem The next question is, where should change begin? The first place is, of course, our universities. These are institutions that train future staff for ministries and think tanks in Uzbekistan, yet very often undergraduate theses in political science, in international relations, public policy, sociology, whatever social sciences there are, built on feelings and quotations. They repeat general theory from textbooks, quote official speeches, and then offer conclusions based largely on students' own opinion. There is little genuine data, little reflection and sampling, almost no explicit method. I think one of the reasons why we have this kind of issue, I did my undergrad at the University of World Economy and Diplomacy, and huge problem is it's under Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So there should be academic approach rather than defending national interest. I recently participated in one of conferences in Bishkek. I saw that, you know, a delegate from Uzbekistan, instead of proposing an academic debate, he was defending the official position of Uzbekistan. Why would you do that? And I observed this kind of trend in many conferences. We don't have that culture because in our thinking, especially at UED where I studied, we incline to defend the official position. Let us do the science. Maybe it will help to define future foreign policy decisions. If this is how we teach our students, we should not be surprised when later, as analysts, they continue to work in the same way. So if we want stronger think tanks, we must first fix the pipeline. Research training and methodology should not be marginal or purely formal. They should be central parts of the curriculum. Students should experience at least once what it means to formulate a question, collect empirical material, analyze it systematically, and admit what they cannot infer from it. Without this methodology will remain just a chapter in textbook, not a habit of mind. The second place for change is inside the think tanks themselves, in their everyday work culture. Having worked in government think tanks and interned in one of those think tanks, I'm not going to name them, I noticed a recurring pattern, an almost obsessive focus on wording, grammar, and very little attention to substance. There is a Russian term, bukvayedy. In my opinion, this is what explains the current situation in think tanks. An analytical brief begins with the junior analyst. I'm trying to explain how things work in think tanks. Then moves upward, head of department, deputy director, director. At each level, the text becomes smoother. Sentences are polished. Formulations are made safer. The political tone is adjusted. But almost nobody seriously asks, what is actual question? Or what evidence is this conclusion based on? Which assumptions are we making? Where could bias be hiding? We behave like extreme diligent proofreaders. Or in English, proofreading is the best what explains the think tank culture, in government think tank culture. Who check every comma, but rarely ask whether the wings are attached correctly. In the end, the brief that reached to the top may be stylistically perfect. They are, trust me. You will start learning grammar that you didn't learn maybe in universities, as perfectly I mean. But methodologically, it is still the same initial intuition of the junior analyst. Just imagine, junior analyst writes something based on intuition, and the top-level think tank heads, department heads, improve the grammar without changing the substance of the paper, and it goes up to the president. Just imagine. There is another institutional element worth mentioning. Maybe you heard of synthesis departments. In many think tanks, in government offices, in ministries, they have synthesis offices. I think they do the same job. I don't know what they synthesize. They pay attention more to grammar rather than substance of the work. So my concrete suggestion is that since almost every major government think tank already has such department, let us redefine their mandate. Let them not only harmonize wording, but systematically check the substance, the logic, the evidence, the methods. Let them be the ones who send a brief back and say, clarify your research question. Explain where this number comes from. Indicate how you selected your respondents. This doesn't require new money or new buildings. It requires a change in what we expect from analysis. To conclude, the core idea I want to leave with you is simple. Too much of what we call policy analysis in Uzbekistan rests on the feelings of analysts. Time pressure in policy work is real, but it's not an excuse to abandon the method altogether. On the contrary, under pressure, simple methods are even more important. Universities must stop treating methodology as a decorative subject and start treating it as the backbone of training. Think tanks must stop obsessing over commas while ignoring cognitive bias. And the structures we already have, especially synthesis department, should be turned into real guardians of quality, responsible not only for style, but for the rigor. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you also to Mr. Akramov for putting a great effort to reshape, rebuild the idea of think tank and how it should work, operate in Uzbekistan. So among our wonderful intellectual professional speakers, we also have representatives from different countries, as I already mentioned in the beginning of our session. So now it's high time, I guess, to present them turn by turn. And let me introduce the Deputy Director and the Head of the South Caucasus Department, from the Hague Research Institute, Ms. Vita van Dreven. Welcome. Please, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everyone. Dear distinguished guests, delegates, representatives of the media, institutions, and most of all, dear students. I would first of all like to extend my gratitude to the organizer of this roundtable, the Center for Progressive Reforms. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak today in beautiful Tashkent. So first, allow me to introduce myself and the think tank that I represent today. My name is Vita van Dreven. I am Deputy Director and Head of the South Caucasus Department at the Hague Research Institute. We're quite a young think tank based in The Hague, and we're focusing on Eastern Europe, the South Caucasus, Central Asia. And in the Netherlands, we're one of the few, if not the only think tank that focuses solely on these regions. We set ourselves apart by working with experts from these regions who have the ability or have the opportunity to speak about the issues that they are experts on, and providing them with a platform, and most of all, providing a platform to young professionals. We publish on a wide range of issues, organize events together with our partners, again in the regions, and host a bi-monthly podcast. Today I've been asked to talk about policy research ecosystems in Central Asia and how it can be strengthened. In line with my function as the head of the South Caucasus Department, I will be drawing on possible lessons for Uzbekistan through an analysis of these three states. I acknowledge that the respective countries and regions have their own unique identity, history, and ongoing developments. Nevertheless, I hope to be able to provide some insights that may resonate with your own discussions here in Uzbekistan. I will begin with a brief overview of the situation in each country, highlight regional trends, current challenges, and in the end I will be touching upon concrete opportunities for Central Asia and of course specifically Uzbekistan. However, before turning to the South Caucasus, I would like to briefly reflect on why think tanks matter. And I know it might sound ironic from a person from a think tank to make this case, but judging by the people we've gathered here today, I sense that we share a belief in the diverse and active think tank ecosystem and the necessity for it. Think tanks often operate in the in-between. They connect politics, economics, media. They connect academia. They serve as a platform for debate, providing well-argued and evidence-based policy information. Ultimately, think tanks serve to bring forward change and action based on expert mobilization. There are a plethora of issues, region-specific policy challenges that they can choose to focus on. In a time where misinformation spreads easily and public discourse is shaped by fragmented online social media environments, think tanks can provide the opportunity, provide the depth, the context, and the analytical rigor that societies increasingly need. Therefore, I cannot overemphasize the importance of a vibrant think tank ecosystem. In regions such as the South Caucasus and Central Asia, where countries face pressing issues such as the green energy transition, connectivity, security, climate change, to name a few, the need for homegrown expertise is especially strong. Local knowledge is irreplaceable. Turning specifically to the South Caucasus, the three nations have very different think tank ecosystems, which is partially a reflection of their political systems itself. In Armenia, for example, think tanks can operate in relative freedom. The Velvet Revolution brought a surge of civic engagement, and with it, a growth in new policy institutes and analytical initiatives. However, despite this expansion, the think tank ecosystem still faces structural constraints. For example, limited cooperation between think tanks and the states. Many struggle to gain access to policymakers or to have their research meaningfully considered. Without formal channels to go about consultation, their ability to shape policy debates remains modest. This goes hand in hand with the issue of visibility. Many think tanks operate without broad recognition, whether in media, among political elites, or even within academic circles. This lack of influence reduces their influence, and it makes it harder to attract talent, partnerships, and funding. And funding is often the key word in discussions about think tanks. Most Armenian think tanks depend heavily on foreign grants, which does support important work, yet at the same time it creates a financial vulnerability and limits long-term planning. Domestic sources of funding, whether it be private or government, remain very limited. Among the three countries, Georgia has long stood as the most open and dynamic environment for independent policy research. For years, it hosted a diverse, extensive community of think tanks working on everything from European integration to security, governance, economic policy. This pluralism fostered debate and strong ties with international partners. However, it must be acknowledged that recent domestic political developments have begun to constrain this exact space. The adoption of the Law on Transparency of Foreign Influence in 2024, followed by the implementation of the Foreign Agents Registration Act, has created significant uncertainty for civil society organizations as a whole, including think tanks. These laws place heavy administrative and, maybe more importantly, heavy reputational burdens on these think tanks which receive foreign funding. This directly affects the sustainability of the think tank sector, which has relied on international partners like USAID for decades due to limited domestic funding. This legislation has real-life consequences. For instance, I would like to give the example of the Georgian Institute for Politics, which has operated for the last 14 years. It has decided to halt its activities. Its director, Corneli Kakachia, captured the significance of this decision, stating, I quote, "There is no place for think tanks under these circumstances. You cannot fulfill the mission for which you founded it, to help the country's democratic process, the EU integration." In Azerbaijan, lastly, the think tank ecosystem is more state-centric, and independent analytical institutions operate within a tighter regulatory framework. While this has limited the diversity of voices in the policy space, it also has to a certain degree encouraged the professionalization of several state-affiliated research centers. The operating environment is shaped by strict NGO legislation and administrative requirements around foreign funding. Independent think tanks often face hurdles registering projects, receiving grants, conducting activities that rely on the support of external donors. As a result, the Azerbaijani think tank space is far less dependent on foreign funding than in Georgia or Armenia, not because demand is absent, but simply because access is restricted. This regulatory environment has meant that the most influential policy research institutions are either government affiliated or closely aligned with state priorities. At the same time, the limited space for independent organizations constrains the overall ecosystem. Without a strong base of non-governmental think tanks, there's less diversity, fewer critical perspectives, and fewer channels for public policy debate. Having outlined the think tank ecosystems in the South Caucasus and the ongoing developments, challenges that it faces, the question rises, what lesson can Uzbekistan draw from this? I would like to point towards 4 possible lessons. First of all, rethink what impact means and the overall diversification of the role of think tanks. One lesson from the South Caucasus is that think tanks do not need to fulfill the same function or operate in the same space. Impact is not only about influencing high-level government decisions, it also includes informing public debate, translating complex issues for the media, and bringing global discussions into a national context. For Uzbekistan, this means encouraging a variety of think tank types, some focused on domestic governance reforms, other on international affairs, connectivity, or regional integration. It also means thinking beyond the capital. Regional expertise and outreach to provincial networks can dramatically widen the scope and relevance of public policy research. Moreover, publications in several languages, if necessary and relevant to your aim and audience, can make sense here. Second of all, build a diverse and interconnected ecosystem. In all South Caucasus states, the strongest ideas emerged when universities, independent think tanks, government-affiliated institutes interacted with one another. Even in more centralized environments, the lack of such connectivities, connections limited impact. Uzbekistan can benefit from fostering a more interconnected ecosystem, one where academic research feeds into policy debates, government bodies consult external experts regularly, and independent centers provide alternative viewpoints. Diversity of institutional types creates resilience and raises the overall quality of analysis. Third, deepen cooperation with Western think tanks and research networks. Another lesson from the South Caucasus is the value of international partnerships in Georgia and Armenia, especially cooperation with Western organizations, including think tanks, significantly improved research standards, communication strategies, and overall visibility. Today, Western think tanks are increasingly focused on Eurasian connectivity, the Middle Corridor, sanctions policy, and energy security. They are actively looking for strong Central Asian partners who can bring local insight. Uzbekistan can position itself as a key knowledge hub by engaging systematically with these institutions through, for example, joint publications, fellowships, conferences, and exchange programs. However, it cannot be underemphasized the need to be vigilant for dependence. Fourth, foster regional collaboration on shared challenges. Finally, regional cooperation is indispensable. The South Caucasus shows that even states with political differences can benefit from collaborating on issues like energy security, transit, environmental risk, and digital governance. Central Asia faces cross-border challenges similar to that of the South Caucasus: water management, energy independence, logistic corridors, and shifting geopolitical alignments. Establishing regional research platforms, joint studies, cross-border expert networks would help Uzbekistan generate solutions that no country in the region can develop on its own. To conclude, the experience of the South Caucasus shows that policy research ecosystems do not emerge overnight, or do they develop in a straight line. They evolve through openness, experimentation, and constant dialogue between the state, academia, and civil society. For Uzbekistan, the opportunity is clear. You can build a model that draws on these lessons, but is tailored to your own national context. One that combines domestic priorities with global and invests in young researchers who will shape the region's future. If the past decade has shown anything, it is that Central Asia is becoming more strategically important, economically, politically, geographically, and that means the world increasingly needs a thoughtful, credible, and locationally rooted expertise from this same region. Uzbekistan is well placed to play a central role in shaping the region's policy debates through strong, credible research institutions. I hope that today's discussion contributes, even in a small way, to strengthening that vision. Thank you. If you have any questions about our work, my talk, or anything else, feel free to reach out. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Van Dreven, for your valuable insights and your recommendations based on the experiences and analysis on South Caucasus. It was interesting. And I believe Uzbekistan is even more open for experimenting or for cooperating, for partnering with such institutions, even not from Uzbekistan, but from other countries, regions like Caucasus or Azerbaijan. Now, another guest we invited to our event is also a director of an analytical center called STEM. And he will be talking also mainly about the important role of think tanks from the perspectives of Azerbaijan country. Let's welcome Mr. Orhan Yolchuyev.
Thank you so much. I welcome all of our guests, all speakers. It is a great honor here to be here in this beautiful city in Tashkent. My name is Orhan Yolchuyev. I am the director of STEM Analytical Center. This is the independent analytical center, and we are established about 6 years ago and mostly engaged on covering research on the post-Soviet space, on the country's post-Soviet space. So it is, as well as told our dearest moderator, it is a great pleasure to have to make a research on Azerbaijan and Central Asia relations, and recently Azerbaijan became a member of part of the Central Asia and the format of C5, which gained the Central Asian states. It's became much more, it's strengthening and became C6 format. And Azerbaijan and Central Asia states, they established new geoeconomic union in the Eurasia, and it is a great great historical event for all of our states. So today my topic is about the role of analytical centers in strengthening democratic and democratic governance and accountability, and I try to talk about the Azerbaijani experience on this sphere as well. So what is this think tank for today? There is no any clear definition of a think tank. In its broadest sense, this is the organization that aims to influence the policy through research, analysis, and policy advice. And as we know, there is academic and non-academic think tanks, and the non-academic research sector, in which belongs our center as well. It contains a wide range of different actors, classical think tanks, as well as foundations, including ones connected to, for example, political parties, independent research institutes, trade associations, research bodies linked to unions or employers' organizations, and so on. And I asked a lot in these 5 or 6 years, why did I decide to do this business? Why I be one of the part of the huge, great policy in our region, in South Caucasus and now in Central Asia. And at the same time, it is very beneficial business as well. People come into think tanks with many different skills. Some of them are economists, for example, sociologists, political scientists. Some work on South Caucasus, Central Asia, Europe. But there is a thread running through everything they do, which is the set of skills which are specific to working in a think tank. So, and again, why it is very profitable and very useful, not only for creation and idea, not to be only the part of the biggest, huge policy. I just show an example. Currently, for example, a barrel of oil costs $65 on the world market. 1 kilogram of hydrocarbon resources costs 2.5 cents. And 1 kilogram of the most modern household appliances brings $50 net income to the manufacturer, while 1 kilogram of aviation equipment costs $801,000, and 1 kilogram of science-intensive information technology, the product of the human brain, brings $5,000 net income. And in developing countries, think tanks act as catalysts for political reforms and transformations. It's initiators of public policy and strengthening the civil society institutions. And due to the unprecedented changes taking place in modern society, the excessive complexity of decision-making processes has inevitably led to an increase in the role of analytical centers. And this is due to the fact that think tanks perform an important function in the political system, such as examining the quality of decisions made. So this is very quite the key point in the establishing and working of think tanks, where there is a necessity for professional evaluation of domestic and foreign policy, and the role of think tanks in the formation of science and knowledge, a cult of intellect, in the West has not been small. This is a point that indicates that this real power is in the hands of scientists, for example, engineers, experts, analysts, and other professionals. So, thus, the state wants to learn the society it wants to govern. So, in this case, we could talk about the think tanks, which is moderated by governmental institutions. And there is a huge amount of information, ideas, projects, and initiatives from the lowest levels of decision-making system of society to the highest hierarchy. On one side are people as many as the country's population, and on the other is the head of state. And in order to have an adequate idea of the country, there is a serious need for reliable correct and professionally prepared information and to make optimal management decisions based on it. And this is crucial why we need today much more think tanks, especially in our region, in the region with filled with tensions. The need exists as a challenge due to the possibility of incorrect information or worse, distortion. And if the so-called information elevator system is not perfectly organized, it can negatively affect the decisions made. So if we talk about the think tanks in our region, especially in the South Caucasus, after the collapse of Soviet Union, newly independent states on post-Soviet space faced the difficult task of building their own systems of governance and public policy. And one of the most challenging parts of this transition was the creation of modern analytical centers. And in the early 1990s, most post-Soviet countries had very limited experience with independent research institutions. And there was a shortage of experts, resources, and the general understanding of why evidence-based policy matters. And many early think tanks struggled simply to survive. And today the situation is different, and the countries, for example, of the South Caucasus have made a clear progress in forming more stable and professional policy research institutions. And it is now possible to speak of a real analytical community that contributes to public debate, helps governments with research, and supports regional cooperation. For today, Azerbaijan, Armenia, and Georgia have each taken important steps in strengthening their analytical ecosystem and broadening the range of topics they work on. I think this is the main topic in our analytical ecosystem in South Caucasus. So for today, the strengthening accountability through evidence-based recommendations, it is important case in the in existence of the analytical centers. And for example, I can demonstrate one case from our experience. About 5 years ago, 3 years ago, it was connected by Uzbekistan, by the way. A lot of Azerbaijani representatives of business, they asked that they would like to invest in Uzbekistan, and they applied that to make some research, and they would like to, in which sphere they would like, should they invest their money. So we make some workshop for them, about 20 businessmen. They visited Uzbekistan, Tashkent, Samarkand, Bukhara, and after this visiting, it was a successful visit, and about 12 of them was signed special memorandums and invest in Uzbekistan. So this is very, in think tanks today, generate analysis and evidence-based or ideological recommendations, and there is as well risks for the existence of modern think tanks actually in our post-Soviet area. It depends on funding, because most fundings invest on think tanks, they based on some projects. But we need more sustainable investment. So the business or the government, they should invest on the ideas, on the institutions, rather than on short-term projects. So, in Azerbaijan, especially today, the think tanks, and it shows the experience of last 5 years, think tanks became such as a bridge with public and with the government. A lot of issues, a lot of very strategic issues were we discussed in special our platform, and I today will speak about this platform as well. And this is very useful and make a lot of benefit for Azerbaijan and foreign policy and internal policy. So for today, also I just think tanks, as I said, they are connected, have a very close connection with different institutions and with other spheres, and especially with academic institutions and the media. Get media mentions and get speaking invites, cultivate relationship with reporters. It is very important thing in the working of think tanks to provide our ideas, to provide our projects, which is working for the public society, and which makes and creates one of element of foreign policy. Then we are very close with public institutions and publish at the end of the every month publish special outputs and change, and this change make a huge benefit advantage for changing the public debates, and then it has a positive impact on policy developments. Just I get an example that about one time in 3 months or 2 months we have a huge meeting with governmental structures in Baku, and we are shared with our opinions on the most important and strategic things, and government is very interested on these issues, on this to establishing a work with think tanks in such way. So so this is Azerbaijan think tank platform, which was established a year ago, and it collected all the think tanks for today, which is existing in Azerbaijan. About 150 think tanks today in Azerbaijan we have, and it is academical think tanks, and as well this is governmental think tanks and project-based think tanks. And this platform was established for to improve the communication and exchange the views between the think tanks and with the government. And through this platform, leading think tanks in Azerbaijan can discuss the challenges facing Azerbaijani national interests and formulate scientifically based proposals and recommendations on possible issues. And this is as well the establishment of communication between the decision makers of think tanks through this platform. And this also improved the awareness in society about think tanks operating in Azerbaijan and their main activities. So Azerbaijan is a good example of this progress, and the country has developed its own national platform, and these think tanks, the university centers, are often I mean, now about the university centers, they are often more academic, but they still help build a culture of professional analysis as well as the independent think tanks. Overall, the progress today is visible. The number of experts today in Azerbaijan has grown, and the quality of analysis has improved, and the demand for research from government institutions has increased. And this is also the key point, that government is ready to work with the analytical centers, and especially the independent analytical centers as well. A major turning point why this we could achieve to make such a platform, and why we now see some movement of establishing think tanks in Azerbaijan. A major turning point in Azerbaijan came after the end of the Karabakh War in 2020. And the country entered a new phase in its foreign policy with more diverse connections and broader regional engagement. And this created a need for deeper and more specialized analysis. And as a result, think tanks began studying new topics. For example, reconstruction of Karabakh, where everything is destroyed. Regional security is one of the topics. Economic corridors, it is as well very important thing for us in case that Azerbaijan tried to become a transport hub in the South Caucasus, and we are working closely in this issue with Uzbekistan and other Central Asian Asia states. Then the energy corridors. Last year we established special energy corridor from Central Asia to Europe with participation of Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan. Actually, and this is the new green energy corridor, which is now on the process of establishing. And so the analytical agenda became more diverse, and experts started working with a wider set of partners. Bilateral relationships also play an important role in shaping the analytical environment, and Azerbaijan's strong ties, for example, with Georgia, allow experts from both countries to exchange information openly and transparently. And for example, our center is in constant contact with Georgian colleagues, which gives us reliable and timely insights about developments in Georgia, and this helps us produce accurate, focused and direct connections with Armenia. But now these connections became much more, they are increasing. About only last month we have 4 meetings with Armenian experts. So analysts from both sides now travel to Baku and Yerevan for meetings, discussions, and public events. And there is a huge role of think tanks on these engagements. And these visits take place openly, and participants share their impressions with the public afterwards. And this shows that the peace process is beginning to influence track 2 diplomacy. So think tanks and experts now have more space to build communication, reduce misunderstandings and contribute to a more stable regional environment. Cooperation is also expanding between the South Caucasus and the Central Asia. And for example, I am a member of special expert groups focused on Azerbaijan-Uzbekistan and Azerbaijan-Kazakhstan relations. And these meetings are not just formal sessions. They involve many hours of discussions and collective thinking. And at the end, we produce recommendations that reach government officials and are considered at high levels. And this demonstrates that expert work can directly support policy making and strengthening the interstate cooperation. So one of the biggest and important projects which we're implementing, our center began, this is soil geography. This is about the Azerbaijan and Central Asia. And this is a platform connecting experts from Central Asia and Azerbaijan. And we meet with the experts from the Central Asia and to discuss regional issues, share research, and learn from each other. And interestingly, that only a few months after this project began, we just began it about 5 months ago. And a few months after this project began, Azerbaijan became full participant in the consultative meeting of the heads of the state of Central Asia. And the last meeting was here in Tashkent a couple of weeks ago. And while this was a political decision, the expert conversation, analysis, and exchange helped prepare the ground to establishing new format, C6 format, Azerbaijan and Central Asia states. And these examples shows how expert dialogue can support diplomatic progress and create a better climate for regional cooperation. And today our main goal is to continue this exchange of these ideas, and it is important not only to share conclusions, but also to understand each other's research methods and analytical approaches. I'm finishing. And this help create a common language of analysis and allows experts to work together more effectively. And in a period of fast geopolitical change, such cooperation becomes especially valuable. Thank you so much for your attention. I would like to express my gratitude to Center of Progressive Reforms, and I hope we conclude and establish fruitful cooperation in the future due to benefits of our states, our nations. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you again, Mr. Yolchuyev, for such an informative, very useful presentation and then cases you shared with us. And also special thanks for highlighting possible and prosperous fields that we can work together on, on the future projects, fruitful projects. Endigi navbatni yana bir mehmonimizga beradigan bo'lsak, Muminov Bekzod Abduvahobovich, O'zbekiston Respublikasi Prezidenti huzuridagi Qonunchilik va huquqiy siyosat instituti bosh ilmiy xodimi. Ular bugun biz bilan uzoq muddatli huquqiy siyosat shakllantirishda aql markazlarining roli haqida qisqacha gapirib beradilar. Iltimos, Bekzod aka, marhamat.
Assalomu alaykum, hurmatli davra suhbati ishtirokchilari, hurmatli mehmonlar. Avvalo, bugungi tadbirda ishtirok etish imkoniyati uchun tashkilotchilarga o'z minnatdorchiligimni bildiraman. Ingliz tilida juda ham samimiy, ochiq muloqot bo'lyapti. Demak, bugungi mavzumda, demak, O'zbekistonda huquqiy siyosatning strategik ustuvor yo'nalishlarini belgilashda aql markazlarining o'rni, muammolar, xalqaro tajriba va institutsional imkoniyatlar to'g'risida fikr yuritishga harakat qilaman. Demak, mamlakatimizda hammamizga ma'lum, bugun keng ko'lamda huquqiy islohotlar o'tkazilyapti. Demak, bu institutlar, huquqiy institutlarda davlat siyosatini shakllantirishdagi ishtiroki, demak, juda ham muhim o'rin tutadi. Hammamizga ma'lum, O'zbekiston Respublikasi Konstitutsiyasi preambulasida ochiq va adolatli jamiyatni barpo etish borasida hozirgi va kelajak avlodlar oldidagi yuksak mas'uliyatimizni anglagan holda Konstitutsiyani qabul qilayotganligini e'lon qilganmiz. Ochiq va adolatli jamiyatni qanday qilib barpo etish mumkin? Ya'ni davlat bir kunda mana ertadan boshlab biz ochiq va adolatli jamiyatda yashaymiz degan qaror chiqarib, bu masalani hal qilishga imkoni yo'q. Bu bir vaqtning o'zida siyosiy, huquqiy, iqtisodiy, ijtimoiy mexanizmlar uyg'un ishlash talab etiladigan uzluksiz jarayon. Ochiq jamiyatda qarorlar ma'lumot, tahlil va prognoz asosida qabul qilinadi. Bu funksiyalarni davlat organlari o'zlari mustaqil bajara olmaydi. Buning uchun aql markazlari albatta zarur. Ochiq jamiyat aslida jamoatchilik fikriga tayanadi. Aql markazlari esa fuqarolar ovozini davlatga yetkazadi. Fuqarolarning ehtiyojlari, muammolari, takliflari esa adolatli davlat siyosatining manbai hisoblanadi. Bundan tashqari, ochiq jamiyat uzoqni ko'rgan strategik siyosat yurgizadi. Adolatli va barqaror jamiyat bir yillik qarorlar bilan barpo etilmaydi va o'z-o'zidan vujudga kelmaydi. Ularni shakllantirish uchun sifatli qonunchilik, tahlilga asoslangan siyosat va strategik fikrlash zarur. Aql markazlari jamiyatda quyidagi funksiyalarni bajaradi. Birinchidan, bu intellektual raqobat. Ya'ni qonunlar sifatini oshiradigan fikrlar va alternativ variantlar bizga zarur. Ya'ni bilamiz, qonunchilik tashabbusiga ega bo'lgan subyektlar bor Konstitutsiyada, lekin ba'zi qonunlarda idoraviy manfaatlar yo'q deb ayta olmaymiz. Chunki qonunchilik tashabbusiga ega bo'lgan subyektlar faqatgina muammoni o'zini rakursida, o'zini nuqtai nazaridan ko'radi. Bu aql markazlari bevosita shu qonun loyihasini yoki huquqiy siyosatni alternativ nuqtai nazardan va buni xavflari, tahdidlari, qanaqangi salbiy oqibatlarga olib kelishi mumkinligi bo'yicha intellektual alternativ fikr, muqobil fikr beradi. Ilmiy asoslangan baholash bu aql markazlarining keyingi funksiyasi bo'lib, ya'ni islohotlar, mana aytaylik, bir yilda 15 ta yoki 20 ta qonun qabul qilindi, boshqa qonunos hujjatlari qabul qilindi. Buni samarasi qanday bo'lyapti? Qay darajada bu xalqimizning hayotiga, insonlarning hayotiga manfaatli bo'lyapti? Qay darajada o'ylagan maqsadlarga yetishilayotganligini ilmiy asoslangan baholash imkonini beradi. Va keyingisi neytral pozitsiya. Bilamiz, siyosiy guruhlar har bittasini o'zining siyosiy manfaati bor. Biroq aql markazlari bevosita ilmiy asoslangan, mana mendan oldingi ma'ruzachilar aytdi, ilmiy asoslangan holda, demak, bilimga tayangan holda mustaqil fikr beradi muammo yuzasidan. Bu muammoni aynan aytaylik, jinoyat kodeksiga o'zgartirish kiritish masalasi bo'lsa, aytaylik, biror bir jinoyat turi oshib ketgan bo'lsa, javobgarlikni og'irlashtirish yoki jazoni og'irlashtirish yo'li bilan hal qilish kerakmi? Yoki boshqa alternativ yechimlari bormi? Jazoni og'irlashtirmasdan turib hal qilsa bo'ladimi shu masalani? Shu masalada demak, neytral o'zini pozitsiyasini, ilmga asoslangan pozitsiyasini beradi. Keyingisi bu muloqot platformasi, bu eng muhim funksiyalardan biri. Chunki bilamiz, aql markazlari davlat, biznes, fuqarolik jamiyat o'rtasidagi muloqotni ta'minlaydi. Ya'ni davlat organlari ba'zi holatlarda, demak, tadbirkorlarda yoki fuqarolarda ba'zi bir fikrlarni inobatga olmasligi mumkin yoki eshitmasligi mumkin. Lekin bunaqa holatlarda aql markazlari shu muammoni o'z vaqtida hal qilmaslik, keyin masalan 5 yilda, 10 yilda qanaqangi salbiy oqibatlarga olib keladi. Buni prognoz qiladi va buni bevosita davlatga yetkazish orqali ko'prik fuqarolik jamiyati va davlat o'rtasidagi ko'prik vazifasini bajaradi. Demak, sodda qilib aytganda, aql markazlari demokratiyaning intellektual poydevorini mustahkamlaydi. Demak, aql markazlari, mana think tanks bugungi kunda bir zamonaviy bizda trend, lekin bu aql markazlari bizda avvaldan ham bo'lgan, kecha yoki bugun bu vujudga kelmagan, faqatgina jamiyat balki aql markazlarining faoliyati to'g'risida to'liq ma'lumotga ega bo'lmagan bo'lishi mumkin. Uning natijalari to'g'risida to'liq ma'lumotga ega bo'lmagan bo'lishi mumkin. Sababi aql markazlarining asosiy buyurtmachisi davlat bo'lgan. Davlat faoliyatini, davlat siyosatini bevosita axborot tahliliy jihatdan ta'minlash bilan aql markazlari shug'ullanib kelgan, garchi bu nom bilan atalmagan bo'lsa ham. Demak, O'zbekiston Respublikasida bir qator institutlar bor, bevosita aql markazi funksiyalarini bajaradigan. O'zbekiston Respublikasi Prezidentining 2025-yil 30-oktyabrda qabul qilingan, demak, strategik rejalashtirish va rivojlanish tizimini joriy etish bo'yicha tashkiliy chora-tadbirlar to'g'risida farmonida bu bevosita aql markazlarining faoliyatini takomillashtirishni va tizimlashtirishni, davlat siyosatini ularda ilmiy natijalarda asoslanib yaratishni yangi bir tizimi yaratildi va muvofiqlashtiruvchi kengash tuzilib, bu aql markazlarining faoliyatining natijalaridan bevosita davlat siyosatini ishlab chiqishda foydalanish belgilab qo'yildi. Va bundan tashqari bevosita huquqiy siyosat sohasida qonunchilik va huquqiy siyosat instituti tashkil qilib, uni bevosita funksiyalariga huquqiy siyosatni ilmiy tahliliy jihatdan ta'minlash, qonun loyihalarini ta'sirini baholash, amal qilayotgan qonunlarning ta'sir samaradorligini monitoring qilish kabi funksiyalar yuklatilgan. Bevosita amaldagi muammolarga to'xtaladigan bo'lsak, nima uchun huquqiy siyosat sohasida aql markazlari zarur? Bilamiz, har qanaqangi siyosiy qarorlar, boshqaruv bilan bog'liq qarorlar huquq vositasida amalga oshadi. Ya'ni huquq vositasida bu narsa xalqqa yetkaziladi va o'zini amalga oshirish mexanizmlarini belgilab beradi. Qanaqangi muammolar bor bizda huquqiy siyosat sohasida? Demak, birinchisi qonunlar o'rtasida kolliziya va eski normalarni saqlanib qolishi. Demak, bilamiz, O'zbekiston Respublikasi mustaqillikka erishilgan davrdan beri juda ko'plab qonunlar qabul qilingan, lekin ayrim normalar bugungi kundagi ijtimoiy iqtisodiy sharoitlarga mos kelmaydi. Bu investorlar, biznes va fuqarolar uchun huquqiy noaniqlikka olib keladi. Keyingi masala huquqiy prognoz va ssenariy bo'yicha rejalashtirish, demak, tahdidlarni real baholash yetarlicha rivojlanmaganligi. Bir qator qonunlar vaziyatdan kelib chiqib qaror qabul qilinganligi sababli keyingi bosqichlarda ba'zi muammolarni yuzaga keltiradi. Oddiy mana misol qilamiz, mana bugungi kundagi ekologik vaziyatdan kelib chiqib, bu ekologik vaziyatni sabablaridan ma'lum bir qismi ham bevosita shu ekologik xavf-xatarlarni inobatga olinmasdan ba'zi qarorlar qabul qilinganligi bilan bog'liq. Ya'ni aql markazlari tomonidan shu qarorlarda potensial xavflari, oqibatlari yetarli darajada tahlil qilingan yoki qilinmaganligi yoki davlat siyosatini amalga oshirishda bu narsa e'tibor berilmaganligi natijasi ham demak bugungi kunda shu ekologik vaziyatda demak yomonlashuviga olib kelgan deyishimiz mumkin. Ba'zi misollarni keltiraman. Demak 2020-21 masalan aynan o'zini o'zi band qilgan shaxslar bo'yicha qonunlar qabul qilingan hisobot topshirishi bo'yicha yoki bo'lmasam ba'zi bir soliq imtiyozlari berilgan 2017-yildan 2020-yillargacha va keyinchalik shu o'rganish davomida 2020-yildan keyin soliq imtiyozlari, bojxona imtiyozlari o'zini ko'zlangan samarasini bermaganligi aniqlangan. Ya'ni imtiyozni olgan tadbirkorlik subyektlari o'zini demak majburiyatlarini bajarmagan, u investitsiya shartlarini bajarmaganligi uchun demak bu imtiyozlar bekor qilingan. Bu ham demak bevosita bu islohotlarda investitsiya bilan bog'liq islohotlar bo'yicha huquqiy siyosatni yetarli darajada takomillashmaganligidan dalolat beradi. Bundan tashqari yana qonun hujjatlari bilan bog'liq qanaqangi muammolarimiz bor? Bizda asosiy muammolardan biri turli sohada ijtimoiy munosabatlarni tarqoq tartibga solish degan salbiy amaliyot bor. Ya'ni har bitta masalani kompleks tavrishda emas, balki aynan shu muammoni o'zidan kelib chiqib hal qilishga bir tendensiya bor deyishimiz mumkin. Natijada shu muammoni hal qilish uchun qonun qabul qilamiz, keyinchalik bu qonunda o'zi boshqa muammolar keltirib chiqaradi. Demak, har bitta mana qonun hujjatini ko'rib chiqadigan bo'lsak, 2 yil, 3 yil ichida masalan har bitta qonunga juda ham ko'plab o'zgartirishlar kiritilgan. Vaholanki qonunlar barqaror bo'lishi kerak. Barqaror bo'lishining sababi biznes, fuqarolar unga qarab o'zining xulq-atvorini, kelajagini belgilash kerak. Qonunlar doimiy ravishda o'zgarib borishi, barqaror emasligi ham demak bizni kelajagimizga, huquqiy siyosatimizga salbiy ta'sir ko'rsatadi. Ikkinchidan, qonun hujjatlari loyihalarini tartibga solish ta'siri, shu jumladan tadbirkorlik subyektlari va fuqarolarga tartibga solish yuki har doim ham baholanmasligi, ya'ni har doim ham qonun qanaqangi oqibatlarga olib keladi. Qay darajada demak salbiy yoki ijobiy ta'sirga ega bo'lishini demak baholash bo'yicha demak amalga oshirilayotgan ishlar yetarli emas. Uchinchidan, umumiy tusga ega, lekin amalga oshirishni aniq mexanizmi yo'q bizda qonunlar bor. Demak, asosiy qonunga qo'yiladigan talab to'g'ridan to'g'ri ta'sir qilish kerak qonun. Lekin bizda shunaqangi amaliyot borki, qonunlar to'g'ridan to'g'ri ishlamaydi-da, qonun osti hujjatlariga bog'liq bo'lib qolgan. Mana men shaxsan o'zim sudya bo'lib ishlaganman. Haddan tashqari ko'p qonunlarimizda shunaqangi muammolar borki, fuqaro keladi, qonun bo'yicha meni huquqim shunaqa deydi. Lekin o'sha qonunda o'zida yozib qo'ygan. Buni tartibi, amalga oshirish tartibi qonun hujjatida belgilanadi deb yozib qo'ygan. Natijada fuqaro o'zining huquqini amalga oshira olmaydi. Vaholanki qonunda uni yozib qo'ygan. Mana sizlarga misol keltiraman. Mana masalan, terrorizmga qarshi kurash to'g'risida qonunda terrorizmga qarshi kurashni amalga oshirayotgan bo'linmalarda xizmatni o'tayotgan harbiy xizmatchilarga demak, ish kuni, ish vaqti, pensiya tayinlashda xizmatni 1 kuni 2 kunga, terrorchilikka qarshi operatsiya o'tkazishda ishtirok etgan davrda xizmatni 1 kuni 3 kunga hisoblanadi deb yozib qo'yilgan. Lekin bu normani ijro qilish mexanizmi yo'q. Qanaqa qilib ijro qilish mexanizmi yo'q. Juda ham ko'p shunaqangi imtiyozlarimiz bor fuqarolarga berilgan, lekin aynan ijro qilish mexanizmlari yo'qligi sababli yoki ijro qilishda biz ijro etuvchi hokimiyatga topshirib qo'yganligimiz sababli ham bu qonunlarimiz ishlamaydi. Keyingisi, demak, qonunlar ijrosini baholashning samarali tizimi yo'qligi bilan bog'liq. Qonun qabul qilamiz, lekin uni amalda qanaqa ishladi? Uni keyinchalik 5 yildan keyin, mana ex ante deymiz, mana xalqaro termin bor, uni samaradorligi har 3 yilda, 5 yilda baholanishi kerak. Bu baholash tizimi bizda yetarli emas. Xo'p, demak, aynan huquqiy siyosat shakllantirish bo'yicha mana xorijiy davlatlarda bir qator ijobiy tajribalar to'plangan. Mana aytaylik, Janubiy Koreyada huquqiy siyosatni 10 yil, 15 yil oldinga prognozlaydigan model yaratilgan. Korea Legislation Research Institute tomonidan har bir qonun loyihasi uchun, demak, kelajakda huquqiy modellar ishlab chiqiladi. Qanaqangi salbiy, ijobiy oqibatlarga olib kelishi. Demak, huquqiy tizim 2035-yilgacha bu yerda prognoz qilingan barqarorligi. Ya'ni huquqiy munosabatlarning barqarorligi bevosita yuqorida aytganimdek biznesga, investitsiya muhitiga, fuqarolarning tinchligi, xavfsizligi, osoyishtaligiga to'g'ridan-to'g'ri ta'sir qiladi. Nima uchun O'zbekistonda bu tajriba muhim? Demak, qonun ijodkorligi avvalo ilmiy asos va dalilga tayangan bo'lishi kerak. Islohotlar albatta tez bo'lishi kerak, lekin barqaror bo'lish uchun tahlil va prognoz bo'lishi shart. Xavflar va imkoniyatlarni oldindan aniqlash uchun, demak, mana aytaylik, raqamlashtirish, kiber xavfsizlik, migratsiya, global jinoyatchilik sohasida, demak, yangi xavflar paydo bo'lyapti. Mana e'tibor bersanglar, mana statistikani keltiraman. Kiber jinoyatchilik, mana aytaylik, 5 yil oldin umumiy jinoyatchilikning 4% tashkil qilgan bo'lsa, bugungi kunda 46% ga yetdi. 46%. Prognoz bor, kelgusida, demak, 60-70% ga umumiy jinoyatchilik strukturasini 60% ga yetishi to'g'risida, demak, prognozlar bor. Bu nima degani? Demak, bu narsani prognoz qilish kerak edi aql markazlari va buni oldini olish uchun choralar belgilanmaganligi ham, demak, bu narsaga sabab bo'lgan. Birdaniga masalan bu jinoyatchilik oshib ketayotganligi dinamikasi, strukturasini tahlil qilib, bu narsani oldini olsa bo'lardi. Bu huquqiy siyosatda amalga oshirishda aql markazlarini roli bo'yicha, demak, bu aniq bitta keys. Demak, qonunlar ijrosi baholash mexanizmini joriy qilish, demak, asosiy kelgusidagi bu istiqbolli loyihalardan bittasi va fuqarolik jamiyati va ekspertlar qatnashuvi orqali ishonchni oshirish. Demak, ochiqlik siyosiy barqarorlikning asosiy sharti. Demak, mana bugungi kunda mana bir ochiq muloqot bo'lyapti. Shunaqangi ochiq muloqotda har bitta qabul qilinayotgan qarorlar, siyosiy qarorlar, huquqiy qarorlar jamiyat bilan, demak, muhokama qilinsa, unga bo'lgan jamiyatda o'z navbatida ishonchi ortishiga sabab bo'ladi. Demak, qanaqangi siyosiy effektlari bor? Bu huquqiy siyosatda aql markazlarini ishtirokining natijasida qanaqangi siyosiy effektlari, siyosiy natijalar bor? Birinchidan, mana bilamiz, legitimlik oshadi. Qonunlar qay darajada ilmiy tahlilga asoslangan bo'lsa, jamiyat ularni qabul qiladi va ishonch ortadi ularga. Va keyingisi, investorlar uchun barqarorlik va himoya kuchayadi. Aniq qoidalar iqtisodiy o'sish asosi. Mana bilamiz, investorlar mana kelmoqchi bo'lsa, albatta investitsiya, demak, kiritgandan keyin 5 yil, 10 yilga mo'ljallangan huquqiy siyosatni bilish kerak. 5 yil, 10 yil, aytaylik, O'zbekiston Respublikasining huquqiy siyosati, soliq rejimi, imtiyozlar, bojlar masalasida o'zgarish bo'ladimi, yo'qmi? Aniq bilish kerak. Shuning uchun ham, demak, huquqiy siyosat barqaror bo'lishi kerak va bu bevosita investorlarning barqarorligi va himoyasini kuchaytiradi. Va keyingisi, sud va huquqni qo'llash amaliyoti yaxshilanadi. Demak, har bitta mana e'tibor bersanglar, qonun normasini, yangi qonun normasi shakllangandan keyin ertasiga u bo'yicha sud amaliyoti shakllanmaydi. Sudlar u bo'yicha qonunni to'g'ri qo'llash ko'nikmalarini ega bo'lishi uchun 5 yil, 10 yil vaqt o'tadi. Ayrim shunaqangi normalar bor fuqarolik qonunchiligida, tadbirkorlik bilan bog'liq, soliq bilan bog'liq qonunchilikda. U normani to'g'ri talqin qilish uchun, masalan, 10 yil oldin qabul qilinganda ham ikki xil pozitsiya bor sudyalar orasida. Demak, aynan shuning uchun ham barqarorlik muhim. Qonunlar qanchalik tez o'zgarsa, demak, uni to'g'ri talqin qilish masalasida, qo'llash masalasida ham amaliyot turlicha bo'lib ketishi mumkin. va bundan tashqari islohotlarimiz uzoq muddatga barqaror bo'ladi. Demak, xalqaro imij va demak birinchi navbatda huquqiy raqobatbardoshlik oshadi. Demak, O'zbekiston global huquqiy maydonda barqaror, qonun ustuvor bo'lgan davlat sifatida ko'riladi. Demak, bugungi islohotlar davrida huquqiy siyosatning sifati, davlat barqarorligi, iqtisodiy taraqqiyot va fuqarolik jamiyati rivojining asosiy mezoniga aylanadi. Huquqiy sohada aql markazlari bu davlatga strategik fikr, jamiyatga ishonch, qonunchilikka aniqlik, islohotlarga barqarorlik, xalqaro hayotga integratsiya beruvchi intellektual kuchdir. So'zimni shu Germaniya kansleri Bismarckning so'zi bilan yakunlamoqchiman. Demak, aytadi, siyosatdagi xatolar sil kasaliga o'xshaydi deydi. Ya'ni davolash imkoni bo'lganda aniqlab bo'lmaydi, aniqlash imkoni bo'lganda davolab bo'lmaydi deydi. Menimcha, aql markazlari aynan o'z vaqtida aniqlash va davolash funksiyasini bajaradi va o'ylaymanki, kelgusida va bugungi kundagi bir ochiq muloqot, aql markazlarining rivojlanish vektorlari va ularda o'rni bo'yicha ochiq muloqotlar ularda faoliyatiga, strategik rivojlanishiga katta turtki bo'ladi. E'tiboringlar uchun rahmat.
Bekzod Abduvahobovich, qiziqarli ma'lumotlaringiz uchun sizga katta rahmat. Ma'ruzangizda ta'kidlanganidek, albatta, adolatli va barqaror jamiyatni barpo etishda ilmiy tahlilga tayangan huquqiy siyosat, ochiq muloqot va strategik fikrlash muhim ahamiyat kasb etadi. Now, we're pleased to present Dr. Farhod Tolipov. He is the head of scientific institution Bilim Karvoni, to share his perspectives on this today's subject, specifically the issues of demand for the services of think tanks in Uzbekistan. Let's welcome Dr. Farhod Tolipov.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, colleagues. First of all, thank you, the Center for Progressive Reform, and Mr. Aslanov, my former student, one of my best students from the university, for kindly inviting me to this very interesting event. Yes, I'm a founder of the think tank, non-governmental research institution, in other words. Its name is Bilim Karvoni, Knowledge Caravan, which was created long ago, more than 10 years ago, in 2011, probably the first think tank of this kind in Uzbekistan. Proudly say about my center. When I created this center, my intention was to create something similar to RAND Corporation in Uzbekistan. Yes, it was a big ambition. More than 10 years passed since then. Still, we have just a little commonality probably with RAND Corporation, but ambition still exists. Maybe one day, maybe it requires another 10 years, in Uzbekistan there will be something which is reminiscent of RAND Corporation. I mentioned RAND Corporation because it is indeed a very versatile and very comprehensive think tank in the world, one of the leading think tanks in the world, America-based. And when I studied the elements, the intellectual programs, projects which I think this think tank, RAND Corporation, has undertaken, I was really amazed how comprehensive its activity is. They started from fantastic projects related to space, created even the first computer, we may say, electronic calculation machine of that time. It was long ago, actually, and undertook several projects in other spheres, for instance, even healthcare, urban reform, transportation. Imagine how different these spheres are with which RAND Corporation was dealing. Recently they themselves came to some concerns about the need to analytical works, to expertise. Their concern was that we are witnessing everywhere in the world a resurgent threat, which Rand Corporation itself called truth decay, the diminishing role of facts and analysis in American public life. I think this is specific to a challenge, as I said, everywhere, including Uzbekistan also. To what extent the government, the state, the broader public really needs the works of independent think tanks. This is still an actual question for us, and I would like also to suggest, if I may, some solutions maybe, or some approaches, ideas to this very serious problem, how to overcome or prevent this truth decay phenomenon. I'm familiar with several think tanks throughout the world. I've been engaged not with Rand Corporation, but other American companies, American think tanks such as Brookings Institution. I visited Brookings Institution and made presentations there. For instance, another think tank, a Washington-based Center for Strategic and International Studies, or in Stockholm in Sweden, Center for International Peace Research, Stockholm International Peace Research Institute, and many others. In France, for instance, in Norway, NUPI, and many other countries where there are prominent think tanks, and learned from their experience a lot. And when I decided to create the Bilim Karvani Center, we included in the charter of Ustav, in the charter of this institution, the following ultimate goal. For example, let me read it. Knowledge Caravan is created with 3 interrelated goals: development of social and human sciences, philosophy, history, sociology, political science, law, international relations, psychology, ecology, and others; creation of the Tashkent School of Social Researchers, and training new generation of scientists, analysts, experts, and officials. This is one. Second, production and spreading across the world of the new knowledge about Uzbekistan and Central Asia, as well as attraction of achievements of world science to Uzbekistan and to, science to the studies of Central Asia. And third, making professional contribution to the democratic development, consolidation of the civil society, conducting reforms and strengthening peace in our region. So this is the triple goal which Knowledge Caravan, Bilim Karvani, puts before itself to achieve in its own analytical activity. Bilim Karvani undertakes its functions, its activity in several directions, like fundamental research, academic researches. Second, preparing policy briefs for interested organizations, we call them stakeholders, on different topics. Organizing different public events such as conferences, workshops, roundtables, and other public meetings, these kind of meetings. And finally, educational mission. We would like to provide special so-called short-term, maybe summer courses on preparing or training young analysts. So let me show you one of our products. This is, it's a reclame, probably a self-advertisement, the policy brief which our center prepared. The title of this policy brief is, speaking of itself, you can judge yourself. Zbekistonda enerji xavfsizligi muammolari va AES qurish masalalari. The problems of energy security in Uzbekistan and creation of atomic energy station, nuclear power plant in Uzbekistan. If you are interested, I can share the link to this policy brief. This is the end of self-advertisement. And let me go to more conceptual aspects of my presentation about whether there is a demand to products of analytical centers and how this demand can be strengthened and increased and so on. In this respect, I would like, first of all, to emphasize the point that state-think tanks communications in Uzbekistan are very weak and sporadic, not systemic. Probably there are some few exceptions from this general situation when think tanks and their works, their analytical products are available and demanded and quite efficient. The center which organizes this meeting is one of such examples, but there are just a few centers which are visible in this respect. So the communication between the state and analysts or expert community is quite sporadic. That's why I'm worried about basic problem of such communications, which I call obscurantism. Actually, even without publishing these kind of products or other communications with the stakeholders and officialdom, in reality, in general, there is a very serious problem, as I said, obscurantism, which is we analysts on different levels try to activate ourselves in different forums, making interviews, publishing our articles, appearing in some social media networks, and so on. Sometimes directly knocking to the doors of officials by providing our ideas. But anyway, and very often these ideas are not taken with due attention. Very often officialdom in broader sense, ignore such ideas as if they are themselves, the bigger officialdom itself, a think tank or think tank of itself. That's why this is a serious problem, how they, officials on different levels in different governmental structures, local and central, will demand the products of analysts. Moreover, there are some concerning signals. I hope this will be just the signals which will not embody in the real policy. The repetition or replication of Russian, Georgian, Kazakh, and Kyrgyz approach to think tanks and non-governmental research institutions, and in general to NGOs. You guess what I mean. Ascribing to them the title or the status or the label of foreign agents. Let me tell you that I was, not me, but my center was in a very successful collaboration some time ago with the Georgian think tank, which, this collaboration was very successful. But the time of our cooperation with them coincided with the dramatic changes in the legislation in Georgia and adoption of the law on foreign agents. And in the middle of our project, the project was interrupted. It was canceled because of the adoption of this foreign agent legislation in Georgia, unfortunately. Another problem for us, I think, is the problem of transparency. We today already raised a lot of questions about the role of expert community, think tanks in decision-making process. So my question could be addressed to those who already decided on the following issues, which are really controversial and still cause a lot of questions, especially from us, from expert communities, such as whether there was a strong, deep, comprehensive research of the issue of necessity or expediency of the creation of nuclear power plant in Uzbekistan. The Uzatom, for instance, managers told us that, yes, there was a consultation with expert community about this. We requested the list of those experts because our center also consulted with experts, especially those who are specialists in the nuclear physics, nuclear physicists and radiation, and most of them said that it is not expedient in Uzbekistan. That's why it is a controversial issue. To what extent the NPP project or NPP decision was really consulted with the expert? What was the level of expertise, or, for instance, do you know a very painful issue for us is recently announced or recently made public the fact that the Afghan side is constructing Kashtipa Canal on the Amudarya River. Also, we suddenly and unexpectedly got this news and were so surprised and even concerned about the consequences of this project, which started without any consultation with experts or with officials, with Uzbek side unilaterally. That's why it is also a question about the availability, about the necessity and demand and expertise in analysis. Well, next, maybe I will also draw your attention to the issue that the expertise, the analytical activity in general, and the products which analysts produce are a kind of a double-edged sword. There are different thinkers in such think tanks with different convictions, different outlooks. Their products are different. They differently understand national interests of our country. Probably you all very often hear that we can have different opinions on different issues, but should be united over national interests of Uzbekistan. So this is a very general statement, but as a scientist who defended the PhD dissertation just on this very topic, national interests of Uzbekistan, can ask immediately, what do you mean by national interests? Different political forces understand differently the content, the essence of national interests of Uzbekistan. For instance, does national interest of Uzbekistan dictate the entrance of Uzbekistan in Eurasian Economic Union or not? This is also the very controversial and sometimes very acute problem which divided the expert community in Uzbekistan. So experts, including those who are working in think tanks, also think differently and propose different ideas for decision makers. Very often, works of analysts, experts, independent or affiliated with state structures, provide mostly apologetic works without critical approach, something what Otabek also covered in his presentation. Apologetic works, euphoric tone, with euphoric tone, then everything is perfect, everything is fine. So their speeches and reports are very euphoric. That's why we lack system analysis. Very often trying to raise very fundamental, very actual problems for Uzbekistan and trying to provide some expertise and analytical reports. Analysts, the authors of those products, stem from narrow or superficial vision of the problem and indeed do not go to the level of system analysis. And I can maybe later, if any question, give you more examples about this problem, why we lack, and in which cases, in which circumstances we lack system analysis. Also, maybe I finish with mentioning another think tank which I appreciate most of all, more than American think tanks which I mentioned above. It's a Club of Rome. Club of Rome was created long ago, in the 1960s, late 1960s, and published several analytical reports. It's also a non-partisan, non-for-profit private organization, but I mentioned this Club of Rome because their prognosis, their analytical predictions of future events, global events, appeared to be correct. Most of them appeared to be correct. Interestingly, Club of Rome consists of, it's a kind of a closed club where such people gather together as politicians, former presidents even, computer scientists, political scientists, social scientists, and scientists from other spheres, which makes Club of Rome itself so versatile and comprehensive. And let me quote from the book of the founder of the Club of Rome, and the book which became very famous among many other works Global From provided with the title Limits of Growth, in which Global From people warned humanity to the long future ahead that unchecked consumption of natural resources on Earth will finally lead humanity to collapse. Are we approaching to such a situation which Global From predicted? I don't know, but unchecked construction process in the Tashkent city probably leads, this is my personal opinion, to the collapse of environment ecology in our capital. The quote from the founder of Global From is the following. His name is Aurelio Picei. "The common enemy of humanity is man." When I read this quotation, I paraphrased it in the following way. Again, this is my personal opinion. The common enemy of humanity is artificial intelligence. I'm really skeptical towards artificial intelligence, AI, but artificial intelligence itself was created by man. So that's why Aurelio Picei's point is absolutely correct, that common enemy of humanity is still man. That's why we have to speed up reforms in our country based on science, analysis, and expertise, make them available and demand it before it's too late. Thank you.
Thank you again, Dr. Talipov, for your reflections on the evolving demand for the services of think tanks and your suggestions for prosperous operations performance of think tanks. But before we continue the session, I would have to draw your attention, dear speakers. Unfortunately, we're running out of time, so it would be more efficient if we accelerate our speech, all right? Thank you for understanding. And the next presenter is the political analyst from the Center for Progressive Reforms, Mr. Islamxon Gafarov. Please take the floor.
By the way, Dr. Islamxon Gafarov, one of the youngest doctors in Uzbekistan.
Assalamu alaikum. Good afternoon, dear colleagues, participants. My speech and also my colleague Saudat Umarov's speech will be devoted to the developing young researchers and scientific potential in Uzbekistan. I will also conduct my speech in English, but during my speech I will do some remarks in Uzbek also. In contemporary Uzbekistan, special attention is devoted to developing research competences and scientific skills among students and young scholars. Nearly all universities have introduced courses aimed at cultivating abilities in academic inquiry, research writing, and publication practices. It's encouraging to see that students are learning to conduct data-driven research and to produce analytical papers. In this respect, the country is gradually forming a new generation of professional specialists capable of contributing to national development through their scientific discoveries and rigorous research. However, in our opinion, a number of systemic issues still persist. A significant portion of students' work continues to be published in predatory journals, largely due to quality of thresholders and the lack of experience among both students and instructors in academic publishing standards. Upon closer examination, many such publications are found to be produced with extensive use of artificial intelligence, often without adherence to academic integrity norms. In many universities, the priority has become the more fact of publication rather than quality of work itself. So we have a recommendation to this problem. It's necessary to adapt new realities and formulate methodology aligned with modern academic conditions. One practical measure could be the establishment of quarterly student thesis digest at each university, providing a legitimate platform for student publications. To ensure quality, special coordinating commissions should be created to review and oversee the academic standards of these submissions. Qisqacha gaplarimni o'zbekcha izohlasam, ya'ni biz bugungi kunda O'zbekistonda talabalar va yosh tadqiqotchilar o'rtasida tadqiqotchilarga qaratilgan juda ham katta bir islohotlar olib borilyapti. Aksariyat universitetlarda birinchi kursdanoq ilmiy izlanishlar olib borish, maqolalar yozish bo'yicha maxsus fanlar joriy etilgan. Ammo masala shundaki, mana shu talabalar tomonidan amalga oshirilayotgan aksariyat publikatsiyalarga ahamiyat bersak, ularni aksariyati juda ham sifatsiz amalga oshirilyapti. Aksariyatni sun'iy intellekt yordamida chop etilyapti va shu pulli bo'lgan hishnik jurnallar chop etilishi ko'zga tutilyapti. Ya'ni bularda hammasi shunaqa bir narsa chiqaryaptiki, biz bir tomondan mana shu talabalarga ilm qilishni, ilmiy maqolalar yozishni qo'llab-quvvatlab, yirik islohotlar o'tkazyapmiz. Ammo ikkinchi tomondan mana shu maqolalarning sifatiga e'tibor bermayapmiz. Men o'zim shu 4 yil mobaynida universitetda ilmiy bo'limda ishlaganman va o'zimda shu maqolalarni tekshirish bo'yicha bir professional deb bilaman, chunki aksariyat shu o'qituvchilarni ustama haqini aynan shu maqolalarga qarab belgilaganmiz va maqolani sifati va qaysi jurnalda chop etilganligini bir qiziqib ko'rdim talabalar orasida ham va ko'pchiligi bularda hammasi aslida puch, ya'ni juda ham ko'pchiligi berasiz 150 ming so'm yoki 200 ming so'm sizga istalgan formatda chop etib berishadi maqolalarda va bu albatta ilm bir vaqtda o'zida amalga oshiryapti va ikkinchi jihatdan bu boshqa bir muammolarga olib kelyapti. Bu masalaning ilmiy tomoni edi va boshqa tomondan meni fikrimcha bizda jamiyatda mana shu talabalar tomonidan maqolalar chop etilishi ijtimoiy masalalarga ham olib kelyapti. Ya'ni maqola chop etgan talabalar ko'pincha shunaqa bir holatlar ko'zga ko'rinyapti. Ular o'sha maqolaga qo'shimcha sertifikat olishyapti va ularga misdan bo'lgan bir soxta medalchalar berishyapti. O'shunaqa medalchalarni men ko'kragiga taqib, bir 6 ta 10 ta medal taqib, bu soxta qahramonlar o'zini universitet rahbariyatining oldida juda ham yaxshi namoyon etishyapti. Natijada talabalar blokiga javob beruvchilar bu talabalarni qahramon sifatida olib chiqib, ularda bir turli xil klublar deymizmi, turli xil bir nima deymiz, bir tadbirlar deymizmi, hammasini ular jalb etishyapti. Natijada haqiqatan ham ilm bilan shug'ullanadigan talabalar bu talabalarga ergashmay qo'yapti. Chunki ularda fikricha universitet rahbariyatlari noto'g'ri va nomunosib insonlarni ko'tarishyapti. Natijada talabalarning o'rtasida ham universitet rahbariyatiga bo'lgan qandaydir bir ishonchsizlik hosil bo'lyapti. The second part of my presentation about the master's degree system in Uzbekistan. So the master's degree system in Uzbekistan has also undergone substantial reforms in recent years. In certain universities, the duration of study has been reduced to 1 year, and classes are held predominantly in the evening, which is particularly convenient for students who are employed. Entrance examination for master's programs have been abolished. Admission is now based on possession of a foreign language certificate and a strong undergraduate grade point average. Additionally, tuition fees for female students in master's programs have been waived, representing a significant achievement in the field of gender equality and educational inclusivity. So in this field, nevertheless, also it seems we have some problems. There is a growing perception that the prestige of domestic master's programs is declining. Large number of talented graduates prefer to pursue studies abroad, resulting in reduced competitiveness and attractiveness of local programs for top bachelor graduates. Our recommendation to enhance the appeal of Uzbekistan's master's programs, it's advisable to expand double degree opportunities with leading international universities. In our opinion, this would allow students to spend a part of their academic training abroad, gain exposure to global academic environments, and consequently raise the academic profile of local programs. Ya'ni bugungi kunda magistratura bosqichida juda ham katta shu imkoniyatlar amalga oshirilyapti O'zbekistonda, ammo bizni fikrimizcha mana shu 3 bosqich deb olayotgan bo'lsak, bakalavriat, magistratura hamda doktorantura, magistratura bosqichi eng kuchsiz bosqichga aylanib qoldi, chunki bu meni subyektiv fikrim, shu talabalarning bakalavriat bosqichining 3 yoki 4 kursini olayotgan bo'lsangiz, ular magistr talabalariga qaraganda ancha kuchliroq, chunki bakalavriatning eng kuchli talabalari ular vatanda emas, balki xorijda o'qishni o'ziga joiz deb ko'ryapti va magistratura bosqichiga chet elga ketyapti. Ayrimlari qaytib kelib PhD'ni mamlakatda davom etkazyapti yoki o'sha PhD'ni ham davlat tashqarisida amalga oshirishyapti. Bu albatta talabalarimizning xorijga ketib, xorijdan bilim olib kelishi juda ham yaxshi, ammo masalaning ikkinchi tomoni bor, ya'ni O'zbekistonning magistratura bosqichi o'zining jozibadorligini yo'qotyapti. Ya'ni qani magistrlaringiz aytgan bo'lsa, bir maqtanadigan, olib chiqadigan magistrlar soni borgan sari kamayib boryapti. Bakalavriat bosqichida to'g'ri juda ham kuchli talabalarimiz bor, doktorantura bosqichida ham ko'zga ko'rinayotgan mutaxassislarimiz bor, ammo magistratura rus tilida aytganda slabое звено bo'lib qoldi. Ya'ni modni, biz juda ham mashhur shu chet elda magistratura o'qib kelish va shuning evaziga bizning eng salohiyatli kadrlarimiz afsuski o'zimizda magistraturaga qolmayapti. Bizning fikrimizcha mana shu yurtimizda barcha magistr bosqichlarini chet elga ketish niyati bor ekan, o'sha chet el bilan birga hamkorlikda o'tkazish va aytaylik 1 semestr yoki 1 yil mobaynida o'sha chet el universitetida ham o'qib kelib double degree diplomlarga ega bo'lish. And third point of my presentation, another critical challenge is that many students and master's graduates are not adequately prepared to work in the country's think tanks. Today, the role of analytical institutions in shaping state policy is steadily increasing. Around 30 such centers now provide analytical materials for decision makers. However, the curricula of undergraduate and graduate programs are still insufficiently aligned with the competencies required for analytical work. Our recommendation, the Center for Progressive Reforms has already introduced an internship institute enabling students for acquire practical skills and prepare for the profession of policy analyst. Nevertheless, similar programs are absent in most other think tanks. Therefore, it's recommended to establish a unified coordination center for internships in analytical institutions modeled after the practice of Center for Progressive Reforms, and to expand internship opportunities for students and master's candidates across the country. Yani aytmoqchimanki, mamlakatimizda mana bugungi kunda 30 dan ziyod har xil sohaga oid aql markazlari o'z faoliyatini yo'lga qo'ygan, ammo aql markazidagi faoliyat bilan universitetlarda, oliygohda berilayotgan darslarning farqi osmon bilan yercha. Ya'ni universitet tamomlagan talaba u aql markazida ishlashga qaratilmagan uni faoliyati. Ya'ni aql markazi bizni yuqorida aytib o'tildi, avvaldan ham to'g'ri bo'lgan, ammo bugungi kunda bu juda ham rivojlanib ketdi, ularning soni ham oshib ketdi va bugungi kunda universitetda berayotgan ta'lim va amaldagi hayot u boshqa bo'lib qolyapti. Ya'ni ilm bilan hayot u boshqa bo'lib qoldi. Universitet talabalar o'qiyapti, bilim olyapti, ammo aql markaziga kelganda xuddi hech narsa bilmaganday bo'lib turishibdi va natijada shunaqa holatlar bo'lyaptiki, biz o'zimizda talabalarimizni kamsitayapmiz, ustidan kulyapmiz, sizlarda hech narsa o'qitmagan ekan deb. Bizning fikrimizcha, mana shu universitetlarda ham aql markaziga kelajakda aql markazlarida ishlay oladigan talabalarni tayyorlash va shu yo'nalish bo'yicha demak fanlarni joriy etish va bundan tashqari eng to'g'ri yechimi amaliyotlarda, ya'ni stajirovkalarda, aql markazlarida joriy etish. Biz bugungi kunda progressiv islohotlar markazida mana shunaqa stajirovkalar institutini joriy etdik. Mana bizni stajyorlarimiz o'tiribdi. Rahmat ularga bizga bu tadbir tashkil etgan katta yordam berishdi. Biz bilamiz, xuddi shunaqa institut, misol uchun Istiqbolli xalqaro tadqiqotlar institutida ham mavjud. Ammo aksariyat aql markazlarida bunaqa stajirovkalar afsuski mavjud emas va aql markazlari o'ziga kadr olganda, ya'ni mutaxassislarni saralab olganda aksariyat shu qiyinchiliklarga to'g'ri kelyaptilar va shularni inobatga olgan holda biz progressiv islohotlar markazi taklif etardik. Mana shunaqa stajirovkalar institutini barcha aql markazlari tashkil etishdi. Here I will finish and I will give floor to my colleague Saudat Umarova. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Islomxon Gafarov, distinguished moderator, esteemed participants, and dear colleagues. As most of the audience are students, I hope they are future PhD researchers. I will address also my statements toward them. In recent years, research careers in Uzbekistan have become significantly attractive from financial standpoint and as a social status. So doctoral students now receive a 3-year state fellowship of approximately 7 million Uzbek soums, which marks a substantial improvement in supporting early career researchers. So also I want to highlight some challenges that doctoral researchers face with, and I think that for the support of Islam Gafarov's word, I want to mention that very hard to enter to the globally and reputable journals as a researcher. So for this, you should have very good connections with global researchers, and I think the lack of finance support for the travel expenses for the doctoral researchers makes this side of your activities very weak. So, for example, I think that universities should have list of very reputable and prestigious conferences such as ESCAS, CES, or ASIAC that gathers international experts on Central Asia, for example, and give students the opportunity to participate and raise the local and regional voices of researchers and that academic area. And I think I would also like to cover some gender issues that can be evident for me as a female PhD student. Many times I come across programs designed for women whose content remains rooted in outdated and traditional paradigms. Numerous workshop and training sessions confine women's role to family responsibilities or traditional functions, rather than reflecting modern equality-based perspective. And the categorization of the events that are held in academia for women, for girls, or women's club restricts the development of an inclusive and contemporary gender agenda. I think what is truly needed are platforms that engage women in scientific work, innovation and research, supported by mentorship systems, professional networks, and practical grant opportunities. In my point that supporting young researchers requires not only training sessions or ceremonial events, but also strengthening the culture of academic integrity and personal responsibility, such as we said, that being published in peer-reviewed journals, not the predatory journals, encouraging high-quality research, and establishing sustainable funding mechanisms for access to international conferences for their researchers, and developing institutional strategies to retain talented young researchers within academia, and rethinking gender policies through the lens of modern scientific and inclusive approaches. And I think in today's event, many guests spoke about the air quality in Tashkent, and I would also like to mention that Nobel Prize winner Paul Krugman, for example, is supporting the idea of introducing carbon tax. I think that can be also another interesting idea for the research, how introducing carbon tax for individuals and enterprises can reduce the CO2 emissions, and maybe that can be also one of the options to improve the air quality. And I think that can be my words, my observations. Thank you.
Thank you both of our speakers, Dr. Islamkhan Ghafarov and Ms. Saudat Umarova, for being open, truthful with us, and for your objective views on the conditions, terms and conditions that we have for future researchers, the reality we're experiencing now. Clearly there is a gap for us to work on and to improve the conditions for future learners. And before we finalize our session, we also would like to invite another last speaker of ours from the Center for Progressive Reforms, Mr. Qadar Kuliyev. He is the compliance and anti-corruption expert at this center. Please welcome.
Thank you. Dear guests, colleagues, I will be very brief though, because there was an overlap with my class at Webster University, but I'm privileged that I could secure some of the seats for my students. I don't have that fancy presentations that my colleagues have, but I'll be very brief with some thoughts that I would like to share as a member of the civil society. And by the way, I have to speak maybe a replica for the peer-reviewed journals, which is very, very time-consuming, and I wouldn't say it's an ideal way sometimes for young people, like, for example, Webster University students and other people to hunt for that ideal platform, because ideas have to flow, they have to speak. Anyways, I would love to first say that I'm very privileged to be affiliated with CPR, Center for Progressive Reforms, because as an anti-corruption expert, I actually also represent the only of its kind compliance organization in the region. It's Institute of Chartered Compliance Professionals, the ICCP, which in a positively, aggressively working towards implementation of the compliance mechanism in the private sector. And thanks to another organization that I'm affiliated with, which is CPR, that we are making it happen actually in Uzbekistan. Yes, and I myself personally witnessed in many occasions that the ideas, legal, social, cultural ideas from the perspective of anti-corruption have been actually materialized and implemented and suggested to the government through CPR. And as we know, when we speak about compliance and corruption, government sector, NGOs and private sector, they work in silos together, yes. But the think tank is the real heart of many policies, and I'm sure there's a lot of think tanks and Mr. Talipov, for example, he's also lectures at Webster University, and I know he's been doing a lot for this country and as a leader of this think tank. And I think Uzbekistan has great potential that goes with these organizations. I have two recommendations to share, and we can close. One is based on the model that this morning I came up yesterday. I developed this model. It's half-baked model that has a lot to do with behavioral perspective of anti-corruption. And I presented, by the way, to my students, and don't hang that. We need to probably suggestion to think tanks and particularly to CPR that we design a behavioral anti-corruption index. We call it BACI. And a behavioral anti-corruption index. We call it BACI. That model